dollar. Dirt and money, no soul. Had to go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack of flip for my foes. Dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar. Let me watch out for my partners. Keep my money long, get my team strong. Let me run away from my problems.
Yo, what's good, original crew? It's your boy DJ New Kid, yeah, girl.
Sierra. Okay. Sierra Nicole.
Back on the channel, man. With another segment with Mr. Ballen. Shout out to, what's his name again? Kari?
Yeah, Kari. Oh, Kari.
We got you, bro.
Kari. Yeah.
We got you, bro. He said, hey, do this one. And I was like, damn, it was posted. He hit me as soon as he posted. I said, all right, cool then. A lot of times he hits us up and tell us some of the ones we should do. And we, you know what I'm saying? He ain't never disappointed.
Facts.
So, hey, we got you, man. This must be the worst way to die. Top 3 places you can't go. When they say you can't go somewhere,
baby,
why the hell y'all go?
I ain't going.
That's y'all problem. Disobedience. With that being said, man, before we get into it, make sure you check out the links in the description box.
Down below.
You already know where to go, man. You want to first support, you got to do it. Check out down below. Also, if you enjoyed today's video,
liking it with a thumbs up.
That's all we ask, man. Again, more Mr. Ballen with y'all, man. Y'all know. Pen pad. You know. Purple pad, to be exact.
Today, we're going to look at 3 places you can't go and people who went there anyways. But before we get into those stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So, if that's of interest to you, please sneak in to the like button's house in the middle of the night and burn several bags of microwave popcorn. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's stories. On February 15th, 2004, 2 police officers drove down a quiet street in a little English village called Murrow, and they pulled over in front of this little brick bungalow. Earlier that day, a neighbor who lived on the street had called the police to report hearing a strange digging sound coming from inside of this bungalow. And so these officers had been sent out to see what the sound was and make sure the occupants of this home were okay. Now, these 2 officers were not particularly worried about the occupants of this house. They assumed that some wild animal must have snuck in while the owners were away, and that was all this was. But, as they would quickly learn, that was not the case. After climbing out of their car, the 2 officers just stopped and listened for a second to see if they could hear this digging sound, but the bungalow was quiet, the street was quiet, and so the 2 officers shut their car doors and made their way up to the front porch of this bungalow and knocked on the front door. After a few moments, when nobody answered, one of the officers reached down and tried the handle and found it was unlocked. And so he opened the door just a crack and he called out through this opening in the door into the bungalow saying, hey, it's police, we're here to check on you. But when no one called back to them, the officer opened the door the rest of the way, and immediately both officers saw there was a huge problem inside of this house. The entire first floor was flooded with several inches of water, and they could hear from somewhere in the back of the property the sound of running water. And so again, both officers called out into this house to try to get the attention of anyone who might be inside, and when again they were met with silence, the officers walked into the flooded house and began walking straight back towards this running water sound. And eventually, after walking through the living room, they entered this hallway that went right to the back of the property, and as soon as they were in it, they could see there was an open door at the end of the hallway on the left, and it seemed like the running water sound was coming out of that room. And so the 2 officers, one by one, sloshed down this hallway to this room. They turned left, looked inside, and what they saw completely shocked them and immediately sprung them into action. 2 months before these officers came to this bungalow and found it flooded with water, the owner of this bungalow, 51-year-old Ronald McClagish, had broken up with his girlfriend. And this breakup was really hard on Ronald. He was already divorced. He was totally broke. He had loads of health issues like bad asthma. He had some liver issues. And just generally, he was someone who was kind of physically frail. And so this girlfriend had been one of the very few good things in his life. And now she was gone and he was alone again. And so very quickly after this breakup, Ronald fell into a very dark depression. And so for 6 weeks after they broke up, Ronald, for the most part, just stayed in bed and kind of moped around his bungalow, kind of feeling bad for himself. But then finally, at the end of those first 6 weeks after the breakup, Ronald decided he wanted to get his life back together and just move on. So on February 1st, 2004, so roughly 2 weeks before those two officers would come to his bungalow because of this digging sound, Ronald would wake up feeling determined to start anew. And the first thing he was going to do was purge his bungalow of anything that was his ex-girlfriend's. She left a lot of things behind when they broke up. She had not collected them. And so now they were just kind of sources of pain. And where most of her stuff was inside of Ronald's bungalow was in this closet in one of the bedrooms at the end of the hall. So that morning, Ronald headed down the hall. He turned left into the bedroom. He opened up the closet. He went inside, and with a trash bag in hand, he began rifling through everything in this closet, and anything that was hers, he would take it and put it right into the trash bag. And at some point, when Ronald was almost done pulling the last few things of his girlfriend's out and into the trash bag, from behind him, he heard this strange sound coming from the bedroom. It sounded like wood bending or creaking, but before he could turn around to see what the sound was, the door to the closet he was in slammed shut with incredible force, and suddenly Ronald was trapped inside of this closet in total darkness. Now, Ronald was likely shocked at first, but he would have reached and tried for the handle and found that no matter what he did, he could not open this closet again. And so Ronald began screaming for help and pounding on the door, but nobody came to help him. The closet that Ronald was in was fairly tall, but it was only 2 feet wide by about 2 feet deep, which meant Ronald could only stand inside of this closet. He couldn't sit down, he couldn't bend down, he literally was trapped standing. And Ronald didn't have water, he didn't have food, he knew that no one was going to be checking on him anytime soon, and even though his bungalow was kind of small and shabby, it was built out of brick. And so the likelihood that his calls for help were penetrating outside loud enough that people could hear them and that they would come in and rescue him was pretty slim. And so at some point that evening, Ronald realized he needed to do something different if he was going to get out of this closet. And so above him were a series of pipes across the ceiling. And so he reached up and he grabbed one of them and he broke it off. He was likely thinking that with this pipe, maybe he can burrow a hole in the wall and crawl through to another room, or maybe...
How thick the damn door is, though? If it's a closet door.
Yeah.
My thing is, so you can put like, look, oh, he did say skin, but still, like, look, like the closet doors. I know, if I'm trapped in a closet, I'm getting through that bit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like,
Even
what,
if it's,
like, what was like holding it, like, or
did somebody push it and push something up against it?
Or
But
what was the reason? Did it get stuck? Like, you know how like some of them kind of be off and they'll get stuck.
But I'm also thinking, because he said it was Merle. I never heard of the place, but like a lot of those homes be older built homes, especially over there, like across the ocean. A lot of those homes are like, so the construction of them are basically made to last years. So maybe the door is thicker than the doors we know.
Yeah.
So maybe you can't just boom. You know what I'm saying?
And knock it. Yeah.
I don't know, but shit, I'm still trying that maneuver.
I mean, but it's only so much force you can do with it being as tight as it is.
And how,
you know what I'm saying?
With him being thick, that's a little ass closet too. So that's not
I
closet.
can't move too much to put too much force into it. So it's kind of like, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, I need a little room to bag back and put a little force.
Nah, I'm going straight. You know what I'm saying?
punch a hole in the door and somehow unlock it, or at a minimum, with the metal pipe, smashing it against the wall or the door would be louder than any noise he could make by yelling. However, the second he broke that pipe off the ceiling, something horrible happened. The pipe he broke was a water pipe, and as soon as it was broken, icy cold water began pouring down directly on top of Ronald's head and face. And again, because he can only stand basically in the middle of this closet, he couldn't get out of the way of this water. It was like he was under a waterfall and couldn't go anywhere. And so he likely tried to ignore the water and tried to use the pipe and screamed and do anything he could to get someone to know he was in here, but no one could hear him. And so it was like he was being tortured with this freezing water, and he's in this tight claustrophobic space. It's total darkness, and he's totally panicking. And for days and days, that would be Ronald's nightmarish reality. But despite how terrible his circumstances were, Ronald continued to use that pipe to both smash the walls to make loud sounds. He also began burrowing into the walls, trying to make a hole. But Ronald was getting weaker and weaker. He became very sick. And also, because the water was constantly hitting his head and face, his skin got so saturated that literally his skin started falling off. It basically opened up into these sores and began to sag, and the water just began brushing his skin off. And so finally, after about a week of being trapped in this closet in these terrible conditions, Ronald realized help was not going to come in time, and so he put his pipe down, he kind of slumped up against the wall, and then closed his eyes. Ronald's neighbor, who called the police, actually did hear Ronald using that pipe to try to dig a hole in his wall, and she heard Ronald smashing the pipe on his door, and she must have heard muffled shrieks and yells, but she didn't know what they were and kind of just decided it wasn't her business. But when Ronald's house went from all these strange sounds to silence, that was when she called the police and said, "Hey, I had heard some digging sounds coming from the bungalow, and now I don't." And so when those two police officers arrived at Ronald's bungalow, they went inside, they went down the hallway, they went into the bedroom where Ronald had gone, and they saw this huge wardrobe, which is a big wooden piece of furniture, toppled over right in front of the closet. And at the bottom of the closet, they saw two human feet protruding from underneath that little space at the bottom of the closet. Those feet.
That's the reason why he couldn't most of his way out.
Yeah.
Somebody trapped him in there. You think there's no way a closet just falls over, boom, and traps you in. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Somebody could have pushed it over. I don't know. I'll be speculating. I'm like, ain't no way. Like, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm.
Of the closet. And at the bottom of the closet, they saw two human feet protruding from underneath that little space at the bottom of the closet. Those feet belonged to Ronald. He had managed to force his feet underneath the closet, but of course, he could not have fit underneath the closet door. And so the two police officers rushed over, and together, they barely were able to get this wardrobe off of the closet door. And when they opened the door up, Ronald was in there. He was deceased. His body was still in a standing position, kind of rigid and propped up against the wall, and freezing water was still pouring down onto his head. It would turn out no one had intentionally trapped Ronald. Instead, his wardrobe was just unstable, and it happened to topple over at the worst possible moment.
Damn. Because I was like, that's sad to go out like that. You go out alone, screaming, nobody comes to your rescue.
Like suffering. Like
yes. Like
torture,
that's
like
unbearable. Like, cause you will never like I ain't gonna die like that. You know what I'm saying?
Like you I'm wake up and I just want a fresh start. I just wanna,
regroup and
you know what I'm saying?
Have a bro, and you go. That's sad, bro.
Yeah.
There ain't no other way to put it.
That's so
and
sad.
then like me, I'm like, it's somebody had to. You know what I'm saying? But just because it was unstable and it's just, or maybe possibly was the floor like, you know how them old houses where you might step on one side of the floor, and then the other part of the floor kind of shift with it, and you know what I'm saying, that squeaky floor. So it could have been he was in there making a lot of movement, trying to clean out the closet, and the what do you call it?
Wardrobe.
A wardrobe start to shake and just, you know what I'm saying, fail, boom. Cause I'm like at the like.
Yeah. Ugh. That's awful.
Yeah, man. Sad story.
On Thanksgiving morning in 1900, an 18-year-old named Thomas Pedler told his mother that he was going out for a bit, but he'd be back in time for turkey that afternoon, and then he grabbed his jacket and his coat and he headed out the door. Thomas lived in a very working-class neighborhood in San Francisco, California, where, generally speaking, nothing big really ever happened. It was kind of a place where people just worked, and that was it. But on this day, something huge was happening in Thomas's neighborhood. The big football game between Stanford University and the University of California was taking place at the stadium in Thomas's district, and they were expecting over 20,000 people to cram into this stadium. And so Thomas was not about to miss this incredible spectacle, even though he didn't have enough money to buy a ticket. But he knew he would find a way to watch this game. And so Thomas leaves his house and he runs to the stadium, which was not far from his house, and he waited in front of the front gate where all these people are streaming in to go into the stadium. And around 11 a.m., Thomas's very close friend, Charles, who was also a young man, made his way to the front gate. The two met up, and at first, their plan was to try to sneak in with the horde of people that were making their way into the stadium. But even though they were still hours away from the opening kickoff of this big game, it was at 2:30 p.m., the stadium was packed. I mean, there was nowhere to sit, there was nowhere to stand. People that had tickets who were going in are looking around thinking, where are we going to watch this game? And so Thomas and Charles are kind of like, well, what's the point of sneaking in if there's nowhere to watch? And so they decided, okay, we need to find another way to watch this game. And so they began looking around and they noticed there was a huge fence that lined the perimeter of the stadium. And they saw there was some people kind of climbed up on this fence trying to get a view down onto the field. And pretty quickly, when Thomas and Charles decided they would try to do that too, they saw that all the good spots on this fence were already taken. The spots that were open provided no view onto the field. And so that option as well didn't work. And so Thomas and Charles are frustrated. They're starting to worry that they will not see this big game. But when they walked back over to the front gates of the stadium, they happened to notice across the street was this group of people rushing over to this big white brick factory building. And they were literally placing ladders up against the sides of this building and beginning to climb up it. I mean, this is a 5-story building, and they are just basically free climbing the windows and the fire escapes. And Thomas and Charles realized that the top of this factory was flat and provided a perfect view down onto the field. And so all these people, they're trying to get a good seat to watch this game. And so without any hesitation, Thomas and Charles decide they're going to do that too. So they left the stadium, they ran across the street, and they began climbing up the ladders and climbing the windows and the fire escapes until finally they made it onto the roof, 55 feet off the ground. And when they got up there, there wasn't that many people. And so Thomas and Charles were able to run right over to the front edge of this building and claim a spot with an absolutely perfect view of the game. A couple of hours later, at 2:30 p.m., when the game actually started, the rooftop that Thomas and Charles were on was now completely packed with people. Hundreds of people have climbed up onto this factory.
That's in my head. I'm like, that's the wrong place to be. You know how that roof would give out, bro. Like, there's no reason for all y'all to be on top. And to be honest, even climbing the fences wasn't in my. You know what I'm saying? Sitting on top of the fence, like, because you got to think about back then. They can watch it on TV. You either saw it in person or you heard about it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes in those situations, you don't want to be the person to hear about it. You want to be the person. You want to actually
see it for yourself. Yeah.
But by all, like, at some point, you kind of gotta say.
And it was a big game for them. You know what I'm saying?
But at some point, you gotta be like, hey, we just ain't gonna be able to see it. And kind of take your L.
I mean, yeah, I feel you, but it's kind of like, yeah, I mean.
Safety first.
How old were
18.
Did it say? All they
18.
young, like, they not probably thinking, like, safety first. You know what I'm saying? Because you got all these adults, too, that's, like,
But
not thinking
still,
about safety
And
first.
y'all went to the front.
Yeah.
Some factory workers down below telling people, do not do this. Do not climb on top of this factory. It's not safe. But nobody listened to them. And the police either didn't notice this was happening or they didn't care. And so there's all these people that are on this roof. They're all super excited. And the game has begun. It's 2:30. And as soon as the game started, it was like the crowd in the stadium, which could be heard very easily from this rooftop, just kind of erupted. And there were all these bands playing in the stadium. I mean, it was chaos down below. And it really caught on the roof. All these guys, including Thomas and Charles, they're getting amped about this game. They're singing, they're chanting, they're screaming, they're yelling. I mean, it's total chaos. And Thomas and Charles loved it. But about 20 minutes into the game, as Thomas and Charles are enjoying themselves and the crowd is still going wild, a dull cracking sound could be heard coming from one side of this roof. And so Thomas and Charles, they kind of spun around to see where this cracking sound had come from. And when they began looking out across the sea of people, they noticed on the far side of the roof where the sound had kind of come from, they could see people scrambling to get off the roof. But before Thomas and Charles and the other people around them who were watching this happening could figure out what was going on, there was a much louder cracking sound, and suddenly the floor underneath Thomas, Charles, and everybody else collapsed. And immediately, people on this roof fell all the way to the bottom of this factory, 55 feet below. There weren't loads of floors inside of this factory. Instead, it was basically just one big building, 55 feet high, that housed this brick structure right in the center of the factory that was almost as tall as the entire factory. It was almost like the factory was a shell around this brick smaller structure right in the middle that was like 40 feet tall. And so after the ceiling collapses, Thomas, he falls, but miraculously, he lands on a wooden beam that stretched across the entire factory, like a support beam, and he grabbed onto it, saving himself from falling all the way down. And so Thomas, he only fell maybe 5 feet, so he was okay, but he didn't have a great grip on this beam. He was holding on, but just barely. And so Thomas, he turns and he's looking around at what's happened below him, and he's hearing people screaming, and he's hearing the sounds of people running around trying to help those who have hit the ground on the bottom. And Thomas immediately begins scanning for Charles, and he finds him. Charles was one of the other fairly lucky people, at least in Thomas's mind, Charles seemed lucky, because instead of falling from the roof all the way to the ground, Charles and 15 or 20 other people had fallen right onto that brick structure that kind of made up the main part of this factory. And so Charles had only fallen maybe 10 or 15 feet onto this structure. And so Thomas is thinking, oh, Charles and these other people, they've survived this fall. They're okay. However, the second Charles and the others, who supposedly were saved by landing on this brick structure, the second they hit that brick structure, despite not suffering catastrophic injuries like broken bones and horrible internal injuries, these people on the brick structure began letting out these primal screams, these just horrible blood-curdling screams. And as they did, these loud popping sounds began coming out of their body.
Hell no. What the? Yo, this has something to do with electric.
Oh my God.
Yo.
Then their bodies began contorting forward, almost like a bug rolling up onto itself. It would turn out this factory was not a normal factory. This was a glass factory, and in order to make glass, you need to heat sand and some other chemicals up to extraordinarily high temperatures. You need a furnace that can literally burn hotter than lava. And so that brick structure that was housed in the middle of this 5-story tall factory was a glass furnace, and it was on. And so even though the inside of this furnace was the hottest place, it was over 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit, the outside of this furnace, where Charles and the others had landed, believing they were saved from this 55-foot fall to their death, was still extremely hot. So hot that the factory workers couldn't even go near the furnace, even with special equipment on. The way they worked with this furnace was with these long metal pokers. They would work spark the flames and the glass at a distance. And so the instant that Charles and the others landed on the top of this furnace, they began to light on fire. Those snapping sounds that were coming out of their bodies was the sound of them instantly igniting on fire. And so Thomas and the others who had initially survived this horrible collapse watched as Charles and the others shrieked and shrieked, and their bodies continued to contort, and they continued to burn and smolder. And Charles actually, he would roll up so tightly that his body began to roll down the curved side of this furnace, and at some point his body slipped into a crack in the furnace, and he actually fell into the flames inside, at which point he went silent. Around the time that Charles and the others stopped shrieking, a number of people just out on the road heard the commotion, and they came inside, and one of them was Thomas's father. And in a terrible twist of fate, he actually looked up and saw his son clinging to the beam, Thomas, except it was so hot inside of this factory that Thomas was sweating, he was losing his grip, it was really hard to hold on to this beam, and his father watched as Thomas lost his grip and fell the 10 more feet down onto the furnace exterior. He landed feet first, then he fell onto his stomach and his face. He immediately ignited on fire, began shrieking, and then went silent. All told, 23 people would be killed during this roof collapse, and dozens more would be horribly injured and disfigured. This collapse goes down as one of the very worst disasters in sports history. However, on this day, the crowd inside the stadium was so caught up in the game that they actually didn't notice this horrible tragedy taking place just 100 feet away from where they were. It wasn't until the end of the game, when the winning team's fans carried their players in this kind of spontaneous parade out of the stadium to celebrate, that they walked out onto the street and saw all these burnt up, rolled up corpses of the people who had landed on the furnace.
No lie, that's the saddest thing I've ever heard. Like, and then Thomas, I'm thinking Thomas,
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying,
I'm
about to
like,
make
okay,
it.
we're about to, even though everything else is going, terribly wrong, and
And
you
you
seeing
seeing
these
people dying,
and then it's just like,
and
and
you
then
can
your dad walks in to like happen to witness
and
his
see you
son,
hanging up
like,
there,
see you clinging like for dear life, literally.
but
That's
then
sad.
have to.
And
Wow,
why?
bro.
That's sad, bro.
The Charles went on the inside.
That's a horrible way, man, to go out, for real.
Damn.
Literally burning alive, and that's like hot on top of hot. You know what I'm saying?
When you fall and you immediately at night, bro, I never even thought of something like that being able to. He have covered a story like that before where they was inside that factory with it, but the floor, that was the floor,
right.
and then that was suffering.
This,
to be honest, is worse than that.
Man,
Oh my God, bro, 55 feet is high though.
high.
That's high as hell. 5 feet. Now you tell me I fall 5 feet and I land on a beam. Oh, okay, cool.
Okay, cool.
You can tell me I fall 10 feet and I land on something. Cool. I can survive that. But that 55 feet?
You know something I'm thinking like with a building like that, like I get it. Like, I don't know how it was actually, like, what was around it, or was there any type of
like
signs or safety measures. Or
but
like,
you gotta understand this is the 1900s.
Yeah, that's why I said. So it's way
different.
It's like, dang.
Even if they did have, especially, you already seen they climbing on fences. Y'all was willing to climb on top of a roof of a building y'all knew absolutely nothing about. And to be honest, that was a safety concern for a building like that to be close to a game like that and be on and running while a game is going on because of situations like that. But I don't know, man.
Yeah. That's unfortunate, man.
Yeah.
In April of 1979, a 69-year-old woman named Monica Myers was appointed mayor of a little village called
April of 1979.
April.
In April of 1979, a 69-year-old woman named Monica Myers was appointed mayor of a little village called Betterton in the U.S. state of Maryland. Betterton used to be this very fancy resort town on the water where people from Baltimore and Philadelphia would come there for vacation. At fancy hotels and restaurants and shops, but by the time Monica became Betterton's mayor, Betterton had kind of gone downhill. People had stopped coming to Betterton, all the hotels shut down or were abandoned or burned down. The summer homes of the rich people from the big cities, those got sold off, and down at the beach, all these glamorous boardwalks literally just kind of crumbled into the sea, and in their place were all these shanty towns where homeless people set up their camps. But Monica had grown up in Betterton, and so she really loved the town and wanted to improve it. And so when she became mayor in 1979, she really leaned into her new role way more than other mayors would. Instead of managing the village from an office, like most mayors would do, Monica literally went out in town and just began doing lots of jobs around the town for free. She would ride around with the police and literally stop crimes in action. One time, she stumbled across someone looting a vacant hotel, and she personally got out, chased this person down, and made them put everything back that they had taken. She would pick up trash on the beach, she would do random repairs on people's homes and businesses all over town, and sometimes she would just go door to door asking people how they were doing. And so very quickly, the people of Betterton really grew to love Monica, and they loved seeing her every single day just out and about making Betterton a better place. And so, on March 20th, 1980, roughly 1 year into Monica's tenure as mayor, it was immediately noticeable to the people of Betterton when Monica was nowhere to be seen. That day, she did not go to the police station in the morning like she normally did. She was not seen at the beach doing her trash pickup, and she didn't knock on anybody's door. And so by mid-morning that day, the people of Betterton, all 120 of them, were basically out in force looking for Monica. And at 11:30 a.m., the police in Betterton got a call about Monica. It was this guy who was totally panicked. He could barely make a sentence, and he basically just told the police, "You gotta get here now." And so the police hopped in their cars and they sped to the address this guy gave them. And when they got there, they saw it was this very plain, boxy building that was kind of tucked back in the woods. It was far away from the town center, and really nobody ever went over here. And the police, when they parked their cars, they saw the guy who had called the police, the distraught caller, was standing outside of the front door. He was obviously crying, and he was waving for them to come over and follow him into this building. And so the police got out of their cars, they ran over to this guy, and they're asking him, what happened? Where's Monica? What's going on? But this guy was so hysterical, he really could not describe what happened to Monica. He just kept telling them to come on, follow me. And so he led them into this building, and pretty quickly they entered this huge warehouse where all across the ceiling were these big metal catwalk areas that kind of zigged and zagged all over this warehouse, and below them, all over the floor, were these huge industrial-sized 15-foot tall vats that contained something. And so this guy who had led police here, he stops and he just points at the nearest vat. And so the police, picking up his cue, begin walking towards this vat. And as they got closer and closer, they were hit with this horrible smell that made them gag and cough. And before long, they had to stop and kind of compose themselves. The smell was so bad. It would turn out this building that was kind of removed from the town center of Betterton was Betterton's sewage treatment plant. And that morning, Monica had gone to the treatment plant to help clean some of these 15-foot tall industrial-sized vats that contained human waste. She had done this enough times that when she was here, she did not need any supervision. And so that morning, she was alone. She climbed up onto one of the catwalks over one of these big vats, and she had reached down with her testing kit to test the sewage to see how much cleaning it would need. And as she did that, she somehow slipped and fell into the big vat of human waste. Now, she would not have immediately gone under. It was not like a liquid. It was more like clay or really thick mud, where at first she would have kind of been laying on top of the sewage. But as soon as she tried to move to get out of the sewage would have functioned more like quicksand, where as soon as a part of her body went under the surface, it would not come up again. And so, after the police composed themselves, they climbed up onto the catwalk and they looked down and they saw Monica, who was face down, partially submerged inside of this vat, and she was deceased. Her autopsy would reveal that she died of drowning, which means she literally inhaled human waste.
Woo! Boy, you talking about it's the last part about his foundation, but you talking about a crazy ending, bro? Yo, there is no way.
That's a horrible way to go out too, man.
All these were.
What was the first one was
trapped
the water,
in
the closet with
literally.
with the water just pouring down and eating at his skin because after a week or so, like you just oh my gosh.
Second one
with the and then this one, child.
The third one, feces.
That is just human waste, just so, oh, gee. And you literally drowning on that. Like, child.
So, my thing is, I wonder, so nobody else is even in here? Nobody?
No, she went there because,
like
he
said,
she had did it so many times, she didn't need supervision or help or anyone.
But somebody should always, especially 1979.
But
somebody
the type
should always
of
be
person
there.
that she seemed like she was just like.
I'm just saying, it's a factory like this. Somebody should always be there.
But I'm wondering, did she go like before it even like?
But again, there should be 24/7 supervision. Somebody there, whether security or somebody should be there.
I mean, I get you, but like you said, it was 1980 when it actually happened. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like when stuff happens like this, then they put things in place for things to always, for someone to always be on duty or some type of supervision or something. Like it takes like situations in a lot of cases like this to happen for rules and stuff to be put in place. But yeah,
15
that's sad.
feet of human weight. Well, yeah, 15 feet. I just looked it up.
Oh, you looked it up. That's so sad, man.
Bruh, because I was like, somebody, like, you just trying to be a good Samaritan and do right by your people.
Yeah.
Because, like, think about it, though. Majority of the time where a lot of people, unless you're in a small town like this, you may know who your mayor is. If you're in a bigger city or metro or, like, you know what I'm saying? A lot of people don't even know who the mayor is. Never seen him. Like, we've been living here for how long?
Yeah.
Do you know who the mayor is?
I know who he is, but I ain't never...
I don't even know who the mayor is. I've been here longer than you.
You have been here longer than me. But,
never seen.
I've never seen him. Like, I don't know, like, what he... if he be out here.
I ain't gonna hold you. That man can walk right past me. He can walk right past me today, and I won't even be like. I know
the other people really, really like him because when stuff was going on and stuff, I was like reading up and like seeing stuff. Okay. Like when it was time like to like vote for it, I was like reading up on different. But
I don't know, cuz. But I'm just being real. A lot of people don't know. Like
a lot of people don't know.
They don't know the commissioners and all that. But this individual actually made, like, even in a small town, because the town was small, they actually she's still out there amongst the people. She wants to. It's a better like she wants it's Betterton, but she wants a better town. Like to play on words, bro.
True. And then and it doesn't even the fact that she like grew up there, it's like you really I grew up here, I seen like what it was when I was here.
When it was thriving.
When it was, and then like now it's like this, like I know that I can come in and make a change. You know what I'm saying?
And I'm wondering, did she have any family? Did she have any, like, you know what I'm saying, kids? Spouse, parents were like, just
significant,
or was she just, or she just solo dolo?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's just kind of like and I never heard somebody of this story or anything. Yeah. And then I'm even trying to do, because it's 1979, not long ago. Yeah. There's no images of her. There's no really, well, 1980.
Yeah.
But there's no images of her. Like, it just, hey, this lady who died.
Yeah.
That she was. Because you think about it, it's 1980. You're a mayor of a town. There should be some type of photos of you, some type of remembrance of
There's
you.
nothing?
No, like from just. But I'm saying, if I just type you in here.
Yeah. There's
nothing. Mm-hmm. There's articles about you. That's all. This is not her.
Yeah.
But and I don't know what this is. But there's nothing pertaining to what like really identity of her.
And I don't know if it was because of the type of town it was, and it was just so small. Only had 100 and how many people you said? Like 100. I'm just gonna say 100 people because it was like 100 and something people.
That's about like Nutbush.
Oh.
You know what I'm
saying?
Yeah,
like,
that's like
small.
town back home, though. You know what
like that's super small. It's just kind of like.
But it looked like they thriving for a little minute though. Because it was a tourist attraction spot.
Yeah, at one point.
Yeah, so after the tourists leave, you know what I'm saying, still a small knit community. Everybody, the locals know each other.
Yeah.
But I'm saying there still should be something that, you know what I'm saying, identifier.
True. It may not be something online that you can find, but maybe if you actually go to the town, there's probably something. I'm pretty sure.
I'm sure.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But that's sad.
But each case was sad.
Yeah.
Heart go out to each and every one of them.
Yeah.
Because, and each one went out suffering. Well,
yeah.
I often say alone. Monica did alone, and Ronald went out alone. Mm-hmm. Thomas and Charles, it was other people there.
But it's still
it's one of the worst ways because it seemed like an instant death. You know what I'm saying?
No, it wasn't. It don't even seem. It was suffering.
I don't know.
That's not necessarily instant when you can hear people suffering and screaming and like you can see these people because you thought he was good. You thought Charlie was good because obviously he's still alert, making some type of like that's suffering.
And then think about Thomas. You just sit there and watch
this happen, thinking you're good, thinking everyone is good, and it's just like no. And then your dad walks in, have the child. And
it was Thanksgiving.
Oh, I forgot about this.
Yeah, I wrote that down.
I forgot.
I didn't forget.
I forgot it was that's sad, man.
Thanksgiving, man.
For all those families.
Yeah.
Damn.
Hey, man, make sure y'all spam us up. Let us know y'all thoughts and opinions, man, in the comment section down below.
Please.
But as always, I do go by the name DJ McKidd. This is
Sierra Nicole.
We are.
Kiddandceemgmt.
We are, y'all.
Go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack of flip for my foes. Dollar, dollar, dollar,